Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Between Two Friends. And today I have a former comedian and all around awesome person, Kara Brown. Tell us more about, you and what you do.
Brett, thanks for having me. I love that you dropped the former comedian. It was one summer, but it has been very helpful in my life, to be honest. I probably should use that more often, to be honest. Although it wasn't like a professional stint or anything. But yeah, super fun. I did some stand up in college. I did some improv in college, but never really took it to the big screen, if you will. I don't have the balls for that. So now I just tell jokes to people that I want to buy things from me, which seems to work actually
I like it.
most of the time. I've got some great stories, and I feel like if you can get someone to laugh, then you can get someone to like you and they'll buy from you, which has sort of worked for me,
For
which is
sure.
really
In Influence, Robert Cialdini makes a point where some guy like makes a joke on the street and he gets a kiss on the cheek from a girl, and then he gets her to order magazines. And it's like the girl's like, why would I do that? It's because, like you said, the laughter broke down a barrier. It's like you already feel comfortable with that person, so then now you're okay to buy it. So I totally get that.
I think laughter is one of the least used tools that women have in their arsenal. I think being a funny woman is hard. It's hard to do. It's hard to not come across as crass or you know, um, I don't know, saying uncouth things. But I have a great story about stripper names. So if I'm losing my audience, which happens a lot over Zoom, I will stop mid call and I'll say, Brett, can I tell you a story about stripper names? And they always say yes,
Of course.
right? And if I can get this story out and I can get them to understand what's happening, I got like a 78 to 85% close rate if I tell this story. And so if you can have I feel like if you can have two or three of these fun stories sort of in your arsenal, and if they can have sort of like a feel good feeling or like a laugh line at the end, people like to work with people that are fun and
Yeah.
interesting, right?
Yeah. Well, first of all, everyone needs like two good toasts in their arsenal
Yes.
and about five good jokes.
Yes.
So, but I would be the worst wannabe podcast host ever if I didn't say, we got to hear the stripper story because everybody wants to know.
Yeah. Yeah, happy to. So it's 2013, and I'm a shiny new consultant, right? Sales and marketing consultant. And we're using a new tool called Outreach.io. Now they're a bazillion-dollar company out of Silicon Valley, but this is early on. And I've got 25 sales reps on the floor, sort of banging out cold calls all day. And I've got 8 reps on a desk in front of me. And they are basically using whatever crazy marketing stuff that I come up with to test stuff, right? And so we start using the tool. I can send 800 emails a night on their behalf. And Shannon, the only one on this team, is getting higher opens and replies than the dudes. So she's at like a 36% marketing quality. They're at like a 28. So it's annoying me because Shannon doesn't do anything different, right? She's just sitting on the phone being a girl. So we turn all the boys into girls. So Joe becomes Rachel, Bob becomes Sheila, and we crush it. Like we're doing great. Everyone's really
Ah,
happy. We're crushing the quarter. MQLs go up. But I think we can do just a little bit better, right? And so we're emailing essentially truckers. And my girlfriend says to me, girl, turn them into strippers. So we did. So we had Bambi and Candy and Angel. We ended up with this incredible, 50% a return rate on this sort of test we did, and we crushed it. So the reason I tell this story, right, is one, it shows you that I'm sort of scrappy and I'll try new stuff.
yeah, yeah, I
Number
love
two,
that.
I have math, right? I knew the MQL rates along the way. And three, I'm not scared of sort of getting in there and using, pretty blonde girls sell stuff. Doesn't bother me as a woman to get in there and use what we've got. And it's helped us so much.
So first of all, not a lot of men can say that or do that, right?
Also, yes, this is why
But
it's so great. Being
it's
a woman
fine.
in
Yeah,
sales is
exactly.
awesome.
Exactly. Second of all, it's like when you get a friend request from an obvious fake profile on Facebook. And but then you see you've got like X amount of friends in common. I
Yeah.
always click on friends in common
Sure.
to see which dudes thought that there was some random, just total, you know, good looking girl is the nice way I could put it, who just like came across their profiles like, oh, who's this stud that I want to friend on Facebook, right? And I laugh every time because it never fails. So anyway.
I can't imagine being a pretty blonde girl on Facebook or LinkedIn because I think you would just get blown up like all the time. Like I'm not a pretty blonde girl. I'm a middle-aged brunette lady, and like I get hit up on LinkedIn all the time. I cannot imagine if you were like a young pretty girl. You would just be it would just be overwhelming. You couldn't get through the clutter.
Okay, so regardless of everything you just said, you still, and you said earlier you're married, and you have a funny story about that too. You still get quote unquote hit up on LinkedIn.
You would be shocked
Oh my God.
by the number of creeps that are out there just hitting up ladies on LinkedIn. You, Brett, you seem like a nice guy. Like maybe you're not creepy. Who knows? Like time will tell. But there are some super creepy dudes out there that will use like any tool at their disposal to get in front of a pretty girl. It's
I,
weird.
I think creepiness is a spectrum, right? Like it's not just
You're like, I'm only 10% creepy.
it's
I
not yeah,
promise.
it's not just black and white. It's not yes or no. We've got the spectrum. You never
Yeah, sure. We can talk about where you fall on that later.
no,
Mhm.
no, later. That's next episode. All right. We are just having a great time here talking about
Yeah.
God knows what. But tell us about, some of the business stuff because
Oh, the
so
boring
we
stuff.
we hope that entrepreneurs see this show and you are so far you've told us you're not afraid to be bold, right?
Yeah.
And quote unquote you had the balls to do stuff. So but seriously, tell us about being fearless and maybe connect that to the women and what you're doing in your current roles.
I do think it's super important that women join the entrepreneurial world and that they take a real concerted effort to actually make real money. So, one of the big things we talk about, both in my business as a female owner, as well as in Close Her or Launchpad 2X or the Women's Entrepreneurship Initiative or the Entrepreneur Organization, all the organizations that I'm a part of as a female leader, is that less than 2% of female founders will ever break $1 million in revenue.
Wow.
It's 1.7%. This is an American Express number. It's not my number, but women start businesses more often than men.
Mm-hmm.
So we over index on starting businesses, but we way under index on actually getting to $1 million. And you and I both know that $1 million is barely the starting line, right?
Yeah. It just sounds nice.
I had to have this conversation with my team when we did it. So we hit $1 million in about 10 months. And I said, listen, guys, like this does not mean that Kara has $1 million in her bank account.
Right.
This just means that I've spent $999,000 on
Yeah.
you guys.
Right.
Right? Like
Right.
there's
Like you just spent your way to get there. Right.
exactly. So one of my goals, like personal goal in my life, sort of long term, is to help more women break through to the 2% club and then beyond. The women that break 10 million or 50 million or 100 million in their business by themselves, this is the caveat, by themselves with no partners, with no investment, right? So these are bootstrapped women
Mm-hmm.
are literally around a year. So I walked into the Women's Entrepreneurship Initiative, which is the only city incubator in the country for women. It's here in Atlanta, Georgia.
Okay.
And I got to be a member, super fun. I was the second cohort, loved every minute of it. And they gave us one sort of request at the beginning of the incubator. So I walk in this room and there's 10 of like Atlanta's best and brightest in business around this U-shaped table. And I'm like the last one to go in. And I go in and they say, Kara, what's your one request for us? Right? You can ask for office space, you can ask for, I don't know, an introduction to Home Depot, you can ask for like one thing. And I said, sure, I need an introduction to one woman in the city that has taken a service based business to more than $10 million all by herself, right? No partners, no rich
Yeah.
uncles, no buddies, right? No, nothing, just all by herself. I need that woman. Who is that woman that I can go hang out with and like share stories? And Sarah Blakely's of the world are amazing, right? But she's a product business. She's an inventor, which is very different than my service based
Sure.
business.
Sure.
So, who do we know in the city that I can go and just like, become her shadow and
Yeah.
learn from her? And they literally told me she does not exist.
Wow.
And I was like, All right, challenge accepted. Like, let's go, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that's the biggest challenge, because if I were to ask you for one or more middle-aged white guys that had gone from 0 to 10 million in a business or a services business, you could give me, literally dozens. But it's different. It's just different for women. And so not having those role models really like prevalent in the space is something I'm super passionate about.
Yeah. So is this a part-time thing for you or an all the time thing for you? Because this sounds like what you were made for.
Well, I appreciate that very much. I'm gonna steal that, what I'm made for. No, I have to do it first. So first I have to go do it in the business.
Cool.
So we do business to business, lead gen only, hyper focused on supply chain, heavy industrial, and technology, which
Okay.
is sort of boring. But I had the very fortunate career experience to be a part of an IPO team for a giant freight brokerage early on in my career. Got to do a lot of really cool stuff in supply chain. So I know a lot about this space. So we're growing really fast. We grew 60% in the pandemic. We're actually the 90th fastest growing company in Georgia, hair flip. And I think it's really important that the business get to the 10 or 20 million dollar mark before I start like imparting my wisdom upon these poor women who haven't made it to $1 million yet.
Yeah.
So the business is definitely where I spend my time. But if you ask me, what do you want to be doing in 15 years? This is all I want to do every day, all day, is give these women the confidence to take their businesses to actual empires.
Everybody wants to be a difference maker, right? And start a renaissance. But what you just said, like I'm in a group of entrepreneurial attorneys, and there's a fair share of women solo owned who have crossed the $1 million mark.
Sure.
It's becoming less of a big deal in that group because as the years go by, the people who are newer do it faster than the people who are
That's
before,
great.
for
That's
example.
so great.
But I didn't know outside of that little bubble, if you will, because I'm in EO and there's a lot of kick-ass, badass girls in there
Yeah.
that those were the statistics. So that is pretty mind-blowing just to hear that I didn't know that. That's wild.
So if 1.7% of all women are going to make $1 million in revenue, the rounding error that is women of color is atrocious. So I had this conversation just yesterday with someone where they said, "How do you spend your time?" And I said, when someone sends the "Can I pick your brain" email, like I just hate that email. I think it's disgusting.
Yeah.
But if it's a woman of color starting a business, I'll drop what I'm doing and like, yes, you can have an hour, right? Then a woman like me, right? Yes, I'll drop what I'm doing. You can have 10 minutes or an hour. White kid out of college, sorry dude, like you got to pay some cash. Like you're gonna I'll drop what I'm doing, but you're gonna pay me some money for that time because you already have a leg up. You don't,
Yeah.
you can walk into rooms that we can't walk into, etc. So yeah, I appreciate that very much.
That's
I'm looking forward to those days when I get to spend my time doing
that's
that.
part of my theory on why more people don't get to the $1 million mark and then keep going is because in all of our lives we can spend our time on $10 tasks, $100 tasks, $1,000 tasks, and $10,000 tasks, right?
Brett, I say that all the time. That's my thing.
Yeah. So
Yes.
we're we're connecting here. So listen,
Yes.
like everyone spends their time on all the BS because
Yes.
then it's like I gotta clear my everything of the clutter,
Yes.
and then I'll have time to get to the higher level tasks. Well,
Yes.
you just never have time. Do you think that, and I have not thought about this or studied this, because my
Yeah.
theory is women are better at networking, which I've thought about because they listen more and they care more. But maybe you get to a certain point and they give away their time too willingly to either energy monsters or just things that are getting in the way of just hyper focus on the higher level task. I don't know.
Oh my gosh, you are speaking my language. Yes. So I'll give you a very specific example from my life, right? I have two children. I'm a mom of two girls. They're 7 and 8. I have a woman who lives in my house who basically is my wife, right? She does drop off. She's an au pair. She does drop off, pick up, laundry, makes lunches, goes to the grocery store, does the dry cleaning. Like she does all the stuff for the children that if she didn't do it would be my responsibility. She now gets to choose when they go to swim team. Are they going to go at 4 o'clock? Or I don't care. Like I could care less. I'm not taking
Right.
them to swim team. And I think women, and this is super generalization, but in general, women are sort of conditioned to like this is all my job, right? I am responsible for making sure that their uniforms are clean. I am responsible for making sure that they, brush their teeth in the morning. But at the end of the day, those are $10 tasks. Those are tasks that if I free myself up, so just this morning is a great example. My husband and I went to the gym together, which we have two small kids, so who can do that? We have an au pair. We got home, the children were ready for school, lunches were made, hair was teeth, brush was, or whatever it is, hair was washed, teeth were brushed. And Eric and I, my husband and I, sat down for a 5-minute coffee conversation as the au pair and the children were leaving the house. That was a $10,000 moment for me,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
And if
Exactly.
we were running around and shuffling the kids all over the place and yelling at each other because you didn't do cleanup, we had those days. We had those days up until we had an au pair in 2007,
Yeah.
and those were awful times. And so I think from a female perspective, we have a tendency, especially as moms, to think we own all the details and to
Hmm.
think that every detail of these children's lives I have to be a part of. I think this whole idea that we are wrapped up in our children's lives and we're wrapped up in the details and we have to take care of everything ourselves. If more women could get on the I don't have to do $10 tasks sort of bandwagon, they could
Yeah.
be a lot more successful.
I love that example. Just the name au pair, it's cool. I mean,
I
I
have
don't,
an au pair.
right. It just sounds cool. Second of all, someone can have a 7-figure business finding au pairs for people. And I've said
Oh
that
yeah.
recently to a few people. I know someone that does that, but not full time, and she should. Third, my opinion, because I we have 3 kids, me and my wife, and I think that that's I guess that's like my credibility to opine now on women. But anyway, is that mom guilt is real, and
So real.
if you're not combing the hair and you're not driving and you're not doing all those things, you feel bad and you feel like an inferior mom,
We
and
have
you
got to
and
get
you
over that.
and you feel like the moms that you see on Instagram that do all those things and the house is clean and they have time to drink wine and make dinner and all that. And the thing
It's not
is,
possible.
some people would say, well, that's a bad example for your kids and not even have a pair. That's guilt. I would say the fact that your attitude about it is matter of fact. You are not your kids. Their life is not yours. You're actually setting a good example for them to
Yeah.
realize that mom and dad can have a life. We can have our, we're a family, but I aspire to be there someday, and I don't have to be miserable and overwhelmed and underslept all the time. And that's how I feel like I'm being accomplished. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think I have two little girls, right? So my girls are growing up with mommy's a boss,
Yeah.
right? Mommy is a boss. We have staff in our house. I have staff at work, and I didn't grow up like this, right? Like I grew
Right.
up very, very upper middle class. And we have people to do things for us. The hard part for me is keeping them grounded,
Sure.
right? How do I keep these two little girls grounded so they know that mommy has all this because mommy works her ass off,
Right.
not because we were handed anything, right?
Right.
And so that's the biggest challenge, I think.
Well,
Um,
yeah, and like I have to remind our 5-year-old, hey, that's not your housekeeper. You don't get to tell her
right?
to clean up your messes. So yes,
Yes.
that's the part of staying balanced. So, you've already said some really awesome things that I hope people, especially women, take away from this. But final thoughts. What does the world look like for women entrepreneurs in 5 to 10 years?
Oh gosh, I really hope that we are doing it ourselves. I hope that women can help women. I think that's the most important thing. So we have an almost all female team. I think we have 4 or 5 now. And I think women using other women. So find if you're going to hire a vendor, find a woman, right? My CPA is a woman, my website designer is a woman. And I think if we continue to empower each other and pay each other real money. It's not a barter, it's not a, I'll do this for you if you do this for me. Like there's cash involved, and continue to raise the bar for each other, and then we'll raise the bar for those behind us.
Yeah, there it is. I love it. I mean, thank you so much for joining us
This
today.
was fun. Thanks
Yeah,
for
it
having
was,
me.
it was super fun. I hope that people got something out of this, and I would love to stay in touch and keep kicking butt, Kara. I really just thank you for
Excellent.
coming on.